Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Dial Farm Conservation Easement webinar. I am John Rayburn, one of the listing agents with People's Company. I am joined by Carissa Shoemaker and Tyler Bruck with White Rock Conservancy, who will help oversee the easement. And we're also joined by Chris Eddy, who is on White Rock Conservancy's board of directors. I want to first introduce People's Company and the farm we have for sale, and then Carissa and Tyler will introduce White Rock Conservancy and explain the easement. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in any questions you have, and we will answer them at the end. Let's see here. People's Company is a full-service real estate firm specializing in land listings, auctions, appraisals, management, and investment. We're based out of Clive, Iowa, and we are licensed across 30 states in the U.S. We would like to thank Mary Dial for trusting us in the sale of her farm. The farm is 159.24 acres, more or less, consisting of 106.8 FSA cropland acres and 17.97 CRP acres. We're offering the property as a one-chance sealed bid, with bids being due Friday, March 10th. Again, if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A section down below. And with that, I will toss it over to Tyler and Carissa, and they'll talk through the easement.
Thank you, John. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As John mentioned, my name's Tyler Bruck. I'm the Land Programs Manager here at White Rock Conservancy. Also on today's call is Carissa Shoemaker, the Director of Land Stewardship here, and Chris Eddy, a White Rock board member who is heavily involved with the Garst easements. I'd like to take the time today to introduce both the conservation easement that is attached to the property and White Rock, including our role in holding the easement. I'll cover more about Chris and I's roles later in the presentation, but for right now, a little bit on White Rock. So White Rock is a nonprofit land trust. We were founded in 2004. We sit just south of Coon Rapids, Iowa, and we cover over 5,500 acres. White Rock's mission is to achieve a sustainable, resilient rural landscape and transform people's connection with agriculture and nature. White Rock Conservancy currently holds 10 soil health conservation easements covering over 2,000 acres in 5 different counties. Okay. So before going over the easement details on the Dial property, I'd like to take a moment and touch on kind of the basics of a conservation easement. An easement is a permanent deed restriction that protects the land's conservation values in perpetuity. So this easement is attached to the deed for current and all future owners and is filed with the county recorder. The easement is then gifted to a government entity or a nonprofit to uphold and regularly monitor, and that's where White Rock Conservancy comes in this case. So White Rock's role, it is our responsibility to ensure the intentions of the easement are honored to preserve and protect the conservation values of this property. These are described in the easement document and include, but are not limited to, monitoring the different land use areas, making sure erosion control structures are being maintained, checking that cover crops are being planted and terminated at the proper times, and soil sampling, to name a few. Site visits could happen anywhere from 3 to 5 times per year, kind of depends on what we're hearing for project request. And that is where Chris and I come into the picture. So all of the monitoring examples I just mentioned will be completed by me with Chris's support. to make sure these easement provisions are being upheld and the soil health isn't suffering. And we, of course, are going to work with the grantors when sharing farm data, taking project requests, coordinating site visits, and just any and all general questions about the easement that may come up. We're here, we're local, we're available, and we look forward to having a positive relationship with the new owner. All right, so the purpose of a soil health conservation easement is many things. One is to preserve the property as sustainable scenic open space land, protect the land from soil erosion and degradation, promote healthy soils through soil conservation practices and assessment, and to protect water quality. The soil health easement is very unique from a standard conservation easement. This easement is strongly focusing on protecting and promoting soil health by having these conservation practices in place, such as no-till, continuous living roots, and farming on contour. So we'll kind of get into a little bit more of the farm and kind of the easement details here in the next couple slides. So the slide I have up here is just a land use map. At a glance, it'll outline the different land uses and areas within this property, excluding the building envelope, which I have on an upcoming slide. So first on my list here, I've got the FSA agricultural fields 20 and 22. And kind of to piggyback off John's acres, after subtracting existing terraces and the proposed waterways, as you can see there on the west and northeast corners, you'll be right around 103.1 acres between fields 20 and 22 after subtracting terraces and the waterways. Fields 20 and 10 on the south side of the property here. These areas are to be in perennial vegetation in perpetuity, and they will be planted this spring to CRP. Perennial vegetation could include, but is not limited to, pasture, prairie, and timber, to name a few. The two waterways that I mentioned, they're totaling around 1.9 acres, with the terraces being another 1.8 acres. And I just wanted to mention as well the cost associated with the implementation of the waterways and the CRP will be that of Mary Kay. And then a few more things to cover on the map would include the conservation areas. We have the riparian buffer strips kind of running along north to south on the east side and then east to west on the south side of the property. There's 23 acres there. The timber areas here on the southwest corner of the property equal approximately 3.3. And then again, the CRP on the south side being just shy of 18 acres. Last to mention, we've got the critical planting area up here on the north side along the road. That's another 1.3 acres. It was the wish of the grantor that these conservation areas be protected and preserved from both the soil health and water quality standpoint, as well as promoting wildlife and protecting the natural resources into the future. Okay, so now we get into a little more of the permitted and prohibited uses in the easement. So normal agriculture and grazing production are allowed on the land as long as the grantor is adhering to the easement and the land's conservation values are being protected. Livestock are allowed, as mentioned, but are limited to one animal unit per 1.5 acres per year, unless prior written approval is granted from White Rock for a higher density grazing. Construction of buildings can only happen within the outlined building envelope. The new owner is allowed to practice agriculture and grazing within that building envelope. But of course, the same soil health conservation practices and provisions of the easement will apply. The property can be subdivided and sold. However, with each subdivision, there will be a $20,000 cost associated with that. And for each transfer, a $2,000 cost to be paid to White Rock to offset additional monitoring expenses, again, in perpetuity. All right, prohibited uses. Tillage of any kind is prohibited without prior written consent from White Rock Conservancy. Earthwork can be done following installing or maintenance of infrastructure, such as grading work after the removal of fencing or the installation of tile, again with White Rock approval. Tillage is also acceptable with White Rock's consent when there are changes in the land use or repairing any damages to the land. Some examples of that would include maybe prep for or ahead of a CRP planting or repairing damages to the land after an extreme weather event. A very important provision of the easement is soil armoring and improvement with the continuous living roots. For instance, if you're planting an annual crop, cover crops are to be planted each fall following harvest. And to reap the benefits of the cover crops, they're not to be terminated any sooner than 14 days before planting in the spring. In addition to that, cover crops will not be terminated or shall not be terminated 7 days before initial crop insurance planting date. If you elect to plant perennial vegetation instead, the vegetation just has to be maintained year-round. A few other statements in the prohibited uses section are the erosion control structures must be maintained, both shape and function, which would include the terraces and the waterways. In addition to that, other land use areas such as the perennial vegetation fields on the south side of the property, the riparian buffer, the timber critical planting area, they must also be maintained according to a management plan that would be drafted between White Rock and the new owner. Okay, and then last slide, we've got the building envelope. It's approximately 4 acres. Construction or placement of any building or structure other than erosion control structures, fencing, tiling, etc., must take place within the designated building envelope. And again, the land that makes up the building envelope can be in row crop agriculture if you wish, but still will be subject to the same care and provisions of the conservation easement. And just wanted to mention this property does have existing structures currently. That concludes the overview of the easement, and of course we're happy to take any questions you guys have whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so looks like we got a few questions already, and if anyone does have any questions, go ahead and type them in at the bottom there, and we'll go through them here. The first one we have is, I'm really interested in the farm, but would like to know, can I graze the CRP acres once they expire in 2033?
Yeah, so the CRP on the south side of the property, once the CRP is up in 2033, you could graze as long as there are a perennial vegetation there. If you wanted to put that into a pasture, we would come up with the management plan for that, and yes, you would very much be able to graze those acres back there, pending a management plan for that area.
Okay. And the next one, can I remove the trees from the riparian buffers?
The mature, old growth trees will be protected in that area. There may be some areas that would be okay to hay on some of those parts up closer to the acreage. I think with the management plan in place, that would be something where, in certain areas, there would be potential to hay or graze for that reason. But as far as, the old growth, main growth trees within the riparian buffer, those would need to stay as is.
Okay. Can the building envelope be moved in the future?
That might be a good one for Carissa to chime in on. If you would, Carissa.
Yeah, I'll pop on, and I wonder if Chris would also remember some of our conversations about that. As far as I recall from our initial easements, there was discussion about this. It was a little unclear. It sounded like they possibly could. Chris, do you remember more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a legal process to do that. But from what I recall through the other ones we've dealt with, I think that's a discussion with your attorney. But I believe it is possible in the future.
Okay, thank you. Can we remove the older building from the building envelope?
Yes. Any structure within that building envelope would be yours to do as you please with, whether it's, remove the existing and build new, or fix up what's there.
Okay, yep. That's all we have for questions for now. Let's see. Actually, we got one more here. Can you trim back trees from the field borders to accommodate equipment?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you can trim back trees. You can, cut them out altogether if it's in, a fence row or something like that, just regular farm maintenance. Yes, very much.
Okay, good to know. One more here. Can you run tile lines into the riparian buffer area?
Yeah, I mean, you've got an outlet somewhere. So again, tiling is a more definitely need to get permission for that. And obviously a plan in place, but yes, to be able to do it efficiently and correctly, then yes, that would have to be probably done to outlet into the riparian buffer.
And I think I would just add that we'd probably want to collaborate with the NRCS to talk about, the impacts to hydrology and everything in the buffer. Just make sure that it doesn't impact the function. But yeah, a lot of this is flexible to accommodate farm operations. The easement's intended to be pretty easy to work with.
Okay. We do have another one here. What about for renewable energy such as solar or wind turbines in the building envelope?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll take this one. In the previous webinar I've been a part of, those are not prohibited, so those would be permitted structures within the building envelope.
Okay, it's good to know. Well, that's all we have for now. if anybody has any more questions, be sure to reach out to myself, Andrew Zelmer, or I'm sure Tyler, Carissa, or Chris would be happy to answer anything also. So I appreciate everyone's time. And again, just want to remind everybody the bids are due March 10th. So then you can just email them to Andrew Zelmer or myself, or you can mail to us. So thanks
Hey,
everyone's
John.
time, and see you later.
Is this recorded and then it'll be on the website too?
That's correct, Chris. Yep, we have it recorded, and then I'll post it out there so everyone can view it.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, I would just like to end by saying, yeah, please reach out if you guys have any more questions or think of any more. We would be happy to meet up and talk with you about the easement, and please reach out if you have any questions.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.